As Singapore struggles with a record low fertility rate, policymakers are studying more financial support for couples and measures to reduce the stress of raising children. Now, it believes that these are the two main barriers to having children.
Time scarcity is probably the toughest issue of all to address, because we have to deal with the tension between two good things. On the one hand, Singaporeans work hard and strive for excellence, and this has helped us progress as a society and a country. But the pursuit of achievement can sometimes come at the expense of rest, of well-being, and having enough time and space to pursue life goals beyond work, including marriage and parenthood.
Ms. Indranee shared at an annual conference on population, findings and recommendations will be presented to the government in a white paper that's expected to examine barriers to marriage and parenthood, as well as the effectiveness of policy interventions in Asia, Europe and other countries.
The white paper would cover not just social determinants, but also biological determinants, which we think are important, in terms of egg freezing, IVF support, ART support. There's still a lot of room to be done there. Work flexibility arrangement, improving gender equalities, and so on.
And it seems paternity leave alone may not be enough to encourage couples to have more children. And that's one of the findings from a survey that was shared at the population conference. The joint study by the National University of Singapore and Hong Kong University found that fathers who took paternity leave were no more likely to have a second or third child than those who didn't. Now, the study was done before Singapore introduced a 4-week paternity leave for fathers last year. Now, in the study involving more than 2,800 children, researchers found that 2 weeks of paternity leave were just not enough to entice couples to have another baby. It is in contrast to findings in Nordic countries where paternity leave did boost fertility rates. Also, in comparison with Nordic and European countries, the study found that fathers' participation in childcare and domestic duties in Singapore significantly lower. Fathers with jobs such as machine operators, assemblers and cleaners were also less likely to take paternity leave. In Singapore, around 2 in 4 fathers used up 2 weeks of paternity leave. 1 in 4 did not take paternity leave at all.
We have a take-up rate of about 50%. If we can push that higher to 100% and have a better, more equal gender equality in the household and at work, with this longer duration of paternity leave, we hope that we see a positive impact on also couples' fertility intention and behavior as well.
The study also found that children from families with higher socioeconomic status were not more likely to adopt AI tools or use them for academic purposes than those from lower income families. The findings challenges common assumptions about who benefits from and who is left behind by the digital divide. Now let's get more about that study. We're joined by Professor Jean Yeung, Professor of the Department of Paediatrics at NUS Yong Lin School of Medicine, as well as she is a Director of Social Sciences at the A-Star Institute for Human Development and Potential. Now, we also have with us to share more about his experience incorporating AI into his parenting journey, See Haojun. He is a father of 2 and founder of On the Ground, an agency that builds custom AI apps for businesses. Starting with you, Prof Jeong. Now, your team is looking at children's AI use. Talk to me about some of the findings about how children are interacting with AI, perhaps more earlier than parents realize. And what are the biggest developmental risks that you're seeing?
Yes, our latest finding from the SG Leads Singapore Longitudinal Early Development Study shows that Singaporean children are using AI starting at quite an early age. We asked children at the age of 8 to 13 last year in 2025 whether they've ever used AI and whether they have used AI in the last months or so, and what kind of purposes they're using the AI for. And we found that among the 8-year-old, about half of them are already using AI on a regular basis. And by the age of 13, we found that only about 4 or 5% of these children have never used any AI. And so this is quite a pervasive kind of usage that we found too, in the sense that children of different social classes are all using AI. There's really no difference there. We've also found that boys and girls are also using AI. In fact, we found that girls tend to be using AI a little bit more than boys. So some of these findings are a bit surprising to us. That tells us that AI access and usage are quite pervasive in Singapore and started quite early.
Absolutely.
So I think both the parents and children all need a lot of education and guidance in how to safeguard children's use of AI.
Probably a good point to bring in Haojun, who is a parent and whose children are growing up in an environment where AI is very much a part of their lives. Haojun, how old are your kids? And tell us how they are using AI at home and what kind of perhaps boundaries you have in place when it comes to that usage.
Well, I've got two boys. So my P4 boy, he's 10 this year. He uses both ChatGPT and Claude for studying Chinese. When there are characters that he don't recognize, he can take a picture, and then from there he can actually understand the word, and then work from there. Mathematics, he's also using it a lot for mathematical word problems that are a bit harder to look at. My K2 boy, who is 6 years old this year, actually used ChatGPT a lot last year to generate all these images of the dinosaurs that you're seeing. After generating them, he printed them out and colored them and then cut it out. So it's not really just the digital side, but he also incorporated into the real life. Generally, I would say they don't use AI as much as I would like them to, because I think there's a lot of potential there to their academic work or their real life. And in general, I think they actually watch a lot more AI generated videos than I would like. They don't use it as much, but they watch those videos a lot. And so whenever they watch that, I actually end up talking to them a lot about the underlying profit motive of those who generate those videos on YouTube. So we have a lot of conversations in that regard, rather than just them using it for schoolwork or just in general for leisure. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Prof, you heard there about some of the guardrails that Haojun is putting up there. He uses the kid uses it for homework and things like that. So, are we at risk, though, at raising, perhaps a generation that thinks less critically and is perhaps less curious?
I think that, to be honest, none of us know very much about AI. So we all have a lot to learn. And I think it's very important to teach children about critical thinking and also prioritizing safety and privacy issues there. I think in both school and community and family level, we can learn more and maybe hold some hands-on training and workshops for parents and children to learn about AI, some of the risks and benefits that they can get from it. I think we also found that children are using, especially older children, are using it a lot for learning purposes, for translation, for math problems, as well as for their personal interests, like gaming, chatting with the AI, and even shopping and buying things online and so on. So exposure is definitely quite high, and I think both parents and children need more education and guidance from people who knows what is happening online
Yes.
and what to watch out for and so
All
on.
right.
Yeah.
Well, we have to leave it there, I'm afraid. My many thanks to Professor Jean Yeung from NUS Yong Lulin School of Medicine and A-Star Institute for Human Development and Potential, and See Haojun, father and founder of On the Ground. Thank you both.